Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today we're going to be doing our 78th D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. And we're going to be looking at the Dark Hunter Prestige class from the Complete Warrior sourcebook. Dark Hunters specialize in fighting down in the Underdark, hence the name, where they make their way through the dark and twisted caverns to protect underground communities of the good aligned people that make their homes there. And Dark Hunters tend to use their stony surroundings to their advantage to launch ambushes or just to stay out of sight of their foes and follow them until they have an opportune moment to strike. So Dark Hunters tend to be dwarves, they tend to be rangers, sometimes rogues or druids or fighters come into this prestige class. Half-orcs sometimes do, and elves, when they take into account their hatred of the drow, will sometimes join the ranks of the Dark Hunters. Now this prestige class's name does sound a little bit like the first prestige class that an edgy 13-year-old would come up with just going by the name, but we shouldn't count that against it. We should give this prestige class a chance. So let's take a look at what is required to become a Dark Hunter. You're going to need a +5 base attack bonus. You're going to need 5 ranks in craft trap making, 2 ranks in knowledge dungeoneering, 2 ranks in move silently, and 2 ranks in survival. You're also going to need blind fight and track, the latter explaining why ranger is recommended for this prestige class. But you could come into this prestige class as a single class ranger, as a single class rogue who just deals with the cross class survival ranks, got plenty of skill points to spare as a rogue, and just takes the track feat, which anyone can take. Or you could come into this as a multi-class lit ranger rogue, or a multi-class ranger fighter, fighter ranger rogue. Any sort of combination would work. In some ways, the biggest requirement of this prestige class is the +5 base attack bonus, which means that you are going to need to have that many, levels in a full base attack class or more in a 3/4 base attack class to get there. So if you want to get into this right after level 5, ranger is going to be your best bet. But this prestige class does get sneak attack, spoiler alert, although with only 5 levels, there's not a whole lot of features to spoil. So coming into it as a rogue with some rogue levels is a good idea too. There's a lot of different ways you can enter it, and it's really hard to recommend just one. It depends on the type of character you want to play and your role within the party. Dark Hunters get a full base attack bonus and a D8 hit die. They get a good reflex save, so it's similar to a ranger in stats, but not quite. You're going to get 4 plus intelligence modifier skill points per level, so you're not going to get as many skill points as either of those classes. So the stats here are a little bit unique. It's not like some prestige classes that just replicate the stats of the class that they're based on or that they expect to feed into it. And the Dark Hunter, again, is 5 levels. At level 1, you're going to get improved Stone Cunning. This means that you get the Stone Cunning ability possessed by dwarves, or if you already have Stone Cunning for being a dwarf, this increases your bonus from +2 to +4. And of course, this also applies on search checks made to detect stonework traps. So it would be nice if you were coming into this with some rogue or scout or ninja level so you have trap finding. It's also a little bit odd that they didn't ask for any search ranks when you entered this prestige class, but we'll just ignore that. Presumably, if you are coming in as a rogue as your party's trap finder, this will give you a little bit of a bonus. And search is a class skill for rangers, so no worries there. But it's just a little bit odd of a sort of welcoming gift for this prestige class to give you just another +2 on your search checks. Checks to notice unusual stonework, that's nice. Apparently, maybe you could apply this to knowledge, architecture, and engineering or something like that. But Stone Cunning is a racial ability for a reason. I don't think people would even take it as a feat if it was available, or even as a skill trick, which is commonly thought of as a half feat. Because those 2 ranks that you put into it, you could have just spent taking ranks in that particular skill. So, not the best first level feature, but we'll see how it goes here. At level 2, you're going to get Enhanced Dark Vision. And this is going to give you Dark Vision out to a range of 30 feet if you don't already have it. And if you already have Dark Vision, you add 30 feet to the range. And then once you reach 4th level in this prestige class, your Dark Vision range increases by an extra 30 feet. Well, Dark Vision is nice to have if you're in a party where everyone has Dark Vision. The range of Dark Vision pretty rarely actually comes up. While 60 feet versus 90 feet, if you're a dwarf entering this prestige class, does sometimes make the difference if you're maybe on a battle mat or something like that, or looking across a very large room. but most rooms in a dungeon are going to be smaller than 60 feet by 60 feet. And if you are sneaking around, or if you're in a gigantic Underdark cavern, that extra 30 feet of dark vision isn't going to make much of a difference. For something like this, I would hope that you would start out with dark vision of 60 feet, or add 60 feet to your existing dark vision, and then even add another 60 feet on top of that later on. That is stretching to the far end of what ranges of dark vision are even existent in 3.5 at all, even amongst monsters. But maybe that's okay, because you are, again, taking special levels in this class just to get, so far, a +2 bonus on your search checks for stone traps, and now some extra dark vision range. Which is cool, but you could have gotten dark vision from a magic item, or a permanency spell, or somewhere else, other than jumping through hoops to get into a prestige class. At level 3, you're going to get Sneak Attack of plus 1d6 damage. It works the same way that Sneak Attack does. They printed out all the rules text for Sneak Attack here, and the cynical part of me wants to say that it was to cover up how little content there is in this prestige class. In fact, arguably, potentially except for the Death Attack feature at the end, the Sneak Attack feature, reprinting, the normal Sneak Attack rules text, takes up more space than the rest of the features combined. And that's really not a good sign for this prestige class. But an extra die of sneak attack damage is good. You could have just kept taking rogue levels, but we'll ignore that for now. At level 4, you're going to get Stone's Hue. When you're within 5 feet of a stone or earth wall, you can take on the coloration of that stone and blend into its surface. So as long as you're within 5 feet of it, you get a +10 circumstance bonus on hide checks, and you can basically hide in plain sight. You don't have to have any cover, you can just conceal yourself against the wall. This is a nice feature, but rangers get camouflage later on, and that probably would work for this as well. Also, you can get Meld with Stone as a druid, or you could get, a variety of other abilities. This is the first tempting feature of this prestige class so far, as caves, in D&D at least, tend to have a lot of open spaces, and so sometimes it can be difficult to hide. In real life, caves have plenty of stalagmites and stalactites and other rock formations that you could hide behind, as well as being dark. But Stone's Hue is a nice feature. I mean, most dungeon masters aren't going to draw hundreds of clusters of stalagmites into a cave, so having this feature can be good, but you are giving up, assuming you're like a rogue or something, you are giving up at least 2 dice of sneak attack, maybe 1.5, in order to take levels in this prestige class. It does give you 1 die of sneak attack back to compensate, but even so, while this is a tempting feature, going 4 levels in this prestige class just to get it really is very questionable. And then finally at level 5 you get a Death Attack for some reason. I mean, it makes sense for a Dark Hunter to have a Death Attack as their final feature, and it works like the Assassin feature does. It uses your intelligence modifier and your class level in this prestige class. You have to study your target for 3 rounds, and then you can either kill them or paralyze them. This is a nice feature, but again, death attacks aren't the best even for the assassins that get them at first level, but you're getting this at 5th level, so you're a 10th or 11th level character by this point, and fortitude saves are just getting better and better. While this is better than other prestige classes in this book, like the Darkwood Stalker that gets a death attack at level 10, but only usable against orcs, this is better than that, obviously, but it's not going to be as good as the Assassin. And honestly, it's really hard to justify not taking levels in the Assassin prestige class instead, except for maybe not having to be evil to take levels in this one. It has fewer skill requirements, it doesn't require as many feats, and it isn't loaded up with these sort of useless features. I mean, even poison use, as bad of a feature as that is arguably better than Stone Cunning, maybe even enhanced dark vision in a lot of cases. So looking at the Dark Hunter overall, it does require a couple of feats, one of which isn't terrible, but isn't on your first pick, so to speak. It requires a pretty diverse set of skills. You don't have to go that far into it, so it's moderately restrictive to get into, but what it gives you still isn't worth that relatively minor commitment. You get some dark vision, you get some sneak attack, and you get a bonus on spotting traps, but there's plenty of other prestige classes that give you those sorts of things, and getting Goggles of Night or something like that to give you dark vision, or whatever it is that gives you dark vision, is going to be a lot easier than bothering to take levels in this prestige class. You could be getting improvements to your fighting style, or another 2 or 3 d6 of sneak attack, or more bonus feats from fighter, all of which would be better than this sort of mess of disparate features that don't really have any kind of coherent goal. I mean, yes, sneak attack and death attack do line up, even if they're a little bit redundant, but if one fails, the other one's still there to do extra damage. And Stone's Hew does help you hide, but it doesn't come alongside more improvements to your sneak attack. So rather than, jumping through hoops to get into this prestige class, taking all of the different skills that this prestige class wants you to take, you could have just been taking levels in Rogue. Instead, you give up those sneak attack dice and then get nothing in return. If you're changing your character's path in order to accommodate a prestige class, then you should get what you would have been getting anyway, plus a little bit extra to make up for it. That's really the definition of a good prestige class, and the Dark Hunter really fails that metric by a lot. If it got an improvement to your sneak attack at level 2 and level 4, and then got some other kind of good feature instead, even making this a 3-level prestige class with good sneak attack at level 2, getting improvement to your sneak attack then, getting the enhanced dark vision and the improved stone cutting at level 1, and then getting the Stone's Hew and death attack at level 3, or even moving the Stone's Hew to level 2, that would make this a much more tempting prestige class. But sinking 5 levels into this for all these different features just isn't going to cut it. You can take this if you really like the concept, but even the illustration doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. There's worked stone in the background of an Underdark hunter who presumably is moving through natural caverns. Maybe they're in Menzoberranzan, the city of the Drow, sneaking about, but that doesn't really make much sense either. So we're going to have to give the Dark Hunter 3 stars for concept, but only 2 stars for execution, and it really should be 1.5, maybe even 1. Really, you're not going to want to take levels in this prestige class except for maybe the Stone's Hew feature if you really like it. And if you're okay with playing a Goblinoid character for your race, then you can take the Stone Death Assassin from the Races of Stone sourcebook for a similar ability, but with other better features to go along with it. And there are plenty of other better versions of this prestige class as well out there. There's plenty of other ones that will give you stuff like this. So that's going to be about it for this D&D 3.5 prestige class review. The Dark Hunter is pretty disappointing, unfortunately, but it is fixable if your DM's willing to make some changes. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.